Hey, it's Olivia, and today I'm going to be doing the nature book tag. I was tagged by Anya at Well Traveled Books, so thank you for tagging me. I love the tag, and let's get into it. So the first prompt is, what is your favorite book that has a heavy focus on nature? And I think I've talked about this book before. It's probably in my top favorite books of all time. So there's that. So the book is called How Beautiful We Were by Imbolo Mbue, and it is set in a fictional African village, and the village has an oil company that is poisoning and killing children with the environmental effects, and so the community gets together and is trying to understand and is trying to figure out how to fix this problem. And the book is all about every single method they use to try to fix this problem, whether that's appealing to the company, to their government, to the Western media, to protesting and direct action. And it's a really interesting look at the way all of those, the failures or challenges that are posed by all of these different methods, and you get perspectives of multiple children and people in the community. So it's really interesting to see how this issue affects an entire community. And it's also a really heart-wrenching book, and I love it and I really recommend it. The next prompt is, what book gave you a wake-up call? I wanted to choose a book that I haven't talked about before, so there's many. I feel like almost every book I read teaches me in some way, but I'm going to choose How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney. This book does a lot of things. I'll probably talk about it more in depth at some point on this channel. It's really interesting in the way that it takes a look at development in Africa, and Europe's development benefited from subjugation of Africa, control over economic resources there, and stagnating technical development there, and also a lot in there about slavery and what that does not only to a people but also to their ability to develop. That isn't looked at in a stereotypical way. Instead, it's like, okay, if these people were enslaved, what effect did that have, like technologically and et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like that book really opened my eyes and expanded my views a lot about Africa and development and its relationship with the rest of the world. So the next prompt is your favorite book cover that features nature. So for this, I'm gonna pick Fruiting Bodies by Catherine Harlan, which is a bunch of short stories. They all have magical elements to them. So I'll put a picture of the cover on the screen, but there is one story, for instance, where a woman is growing mushrooms out of her body. There's a story about gambling fae. There's a story about reading your favorite author and like seeing all this queer subtext and then being disappointed by like the actual author and their viewpoints. A lot of really interesting queer stories, and I really enjoyed this book when I read it a few years ago. The next prompt is a book that discusses revolution and change. There's a lot, but I'm picking for this one Force and Freedom, Black Abolitionists and the Politics of Freedom by Kelly Carter Jackson. I think when I read this book, it was transformative in changing my perspectives on peace and violence and what is necessary to change our world. The book talks about the differences between abolitionists like Harriet Beecher Stowe that are trying to appeal to people's moral codes and through literature and trying to change people's minds and opinions. And then the book talks about the violence of actual slavery and racism and activism that responded to violence with violence, and disrupting that pattern. Hey, so my camera just died, so sorry if the angle is a little bit different, but I think I was talking about force and freedom, and I think just the fact that we're always fed this narrative of, oh, there's the good kind of activism, the peaceful kind, and I don't know, just like reframing that as like, how do we actually disrupt these structures in our world, and how can force and direct action be tools for us to do that? The next question is, do you read outside? Yes, my favorite spot to do so was in my old apartment. I had this beautiful yard where I had like a loungy chair, and there were all these trees, and I would just like relax and lay back and then just like look up at the trees waving, and it was really peaceful and lovely, and my dog would just like run around and be free, and that was really nice. So I have to find a new favorite spot. I do have a yard with trees now, but it's still cold outside, so hopefully that'll be just as lovely, or I can walk to some parks nearby where there's water. I always love reading near water as well. The next question, I have a obvious standard answer. Your favorite Indigenous author or book. I'm sure other people will put this answer as well. I know Anya did. But truly my favorite book by an Indigenous author is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And I don't know, just the duality of here's some scientific facts, and also here is a spiritual experience, personal, lyrical experience of nature. I just love books like that. I'd love to reread this book actually, because it's been a while now and I don't remember any of the details except for like some specific stories, but I do remember like how it made me feel. So that is definitely my answer for that question. Next prompt is a book that takes place outside or features nature as a character. One book that I really liked that had a bunch of perspectives from nature is When I Sing Mountains Dance by Irene Sola. And it really was a story of an environment. I mean, my favorite story and how the book starts out is with a storm, from the perspective of a storm, which I thought was so cool. But you know, you have human beings' perspectives, even a dog's perspective, which was funny to see how she wrote the voice of the dog. But I love the considerations of, you know, how might this tree or this landscape that has been here forever experience the happenings that are going on. What might they think of humans, but how might that be just like a drop in a larger time frame for them? So yeah, I liked the plot of the book, I guess, but I more so just liked the way that the story was told of this book, and I think that more books should be told from these perspectives, and it's really cool to think about what knowledge or what lessons we might learn from some of these different species. The next question is, what books do you associate with all of the 4 elements? I really enjoyed coming up with answers to this. For fire, I chose Jawbone by Monica Ojeda, and this was one of my favorite books that I read last year. It is about teenagers and power, really. It's a group of young girls kind of testing the limits of what is and isn't acceptable, and trying to get to like the greatest thrill that they can have. And there's a lot of like elements of girlhood too, and like making things up and stories and like scaring each other half to death. And it's like actually a horrific book. There's a lot of horror elements in it, but yeah, a really unique book that I think really encapsulates the feeling of fire. For water, I picked Salt Crystals by Christina Bendick. I read this as part of a book club on Instagram. I think it was Translated Gems, basically a bunch of translated works. This book was about San Andres, an island, and it was about the main character reacquainting herself with her culture and things that she didn't know about her homeland and kind of exploring her family history. So I enjoyed that element of the book, but also just the feeling of this book is so languid, and you have this sense of like island time and the way different things move, and it just feels so slow and like steady, like the waves. And so yeah, for that reason I picked that book for water. For air, I picked Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Sutanto, and mainly I picked this because a lot of times I'm reading heavy or dark things, and I don't really read a lot of light, comedic, hopeful things. So this book, also just like the idea of air and lungs and laughter, and this book had me just like straight cackling many times, so that was fun. It's about this young woman who's in a family business, and they all do a different element of the wedding, like the photography, cooking, entertainment, etc. And a murder takes place at the wedding, so it's all about the family trying to work the job and cover up the murder, and has all of the family drama, and of course things bubble to the surface, and it's just like a wild ride and a riot. And so I picked that for its levity and how it made me laugh for air. So for earth, I picked Journal of an Ordinary Grief by Mahmoud Darwish, and I read this when I was reading a bunch of Palestinian poetry, and I have pages of thoughts about this book, but I'll just say for this tag, I picked it for earth because of the connection to land and displacement from land, and all of the familiarities of like being in an environment that we take for granted. This is a beautiful book. I'd love to read more by this author. And free Palestine. We are all connected. Name a book that brought you community. So just practically speaking, the last book that I read with a book group that I have, an organization I'm part of, was What Is to Be Done by Lenin. I don't really know if I want to get into that, but basically just it's been transformative to read theory in an activist group and be like, all right, what are we taking directly from this for our work? What was successful in the past, and what dissolved movements, and what do we want to build? I really enjoyed being a part of that. But also a book that is about community that I really loved and that taught me a lot of things was, I think I first heard Climathon talking about it on her channel, and that is How We Show Up, Reclaiming Family, Friendship, and Community by Mia Birdsong. I'm trying to reevaluate how I look at relationships and friendships in my life, and form deeper bonds with people, and be more connected to community and the world around me. So reading this book was amazing, and I got a lot of insights from it, just from anything from how to create relationships that are intimate and where somebody's just waltzing into your home and connected to you, but how to intentionally build those things, I think was really cool. if you feel disconnected, I would definitely recommend reading it. And the last question is, have you ever participated in Climathon, and are you planning to? And yes, I participated. I can't remember how many years it's been going for and how long I've been participating, but I think I've done it for the past couple of years, and I am reading books for Climathon right now and enjoying them, and they are definitely expanding my worldview, so I'm so excited to be doing that this entire year. And yeah, I don't know if anybody is interested in doing this tag, you're welcome to do it. Definitely tell me your favorite books about the climate or what you're reading. I'd love to hear. And thanks, Anya, for tagging me.